Preparing live stream.
Okay. Oh, it says meeting now streaming alive on Facebook.
Good, good. And I think we are now up and running on Facebook.
Yay!
Yay! So thank you all for joining us for the next in our series of Facebook Live events. Check the MWA NorCal website events page for upcoming Facebook Live and other events. I'll drop that link into the chat of Facebook. Past Facebook Live events are available in replay in the video section of MWA NorCal Facebook page, so please feel free to go back and watch those. Our Facebook Live events would not be possible without our presenters who are generous enough to share their time and talent with us, paid only in our undying gratitude. MWA NorCal is happy to welcome Margaret Dumas with us today, author of the Movie Palace Mysteries, the Married to Mystery series, and a standalone called The Balance Thing. I will now retreat to my place behind the curtain, but I'll be monitoring the comments section of Facebook. If you have any questions at all, please post them in the chat. I'll make sure that Margaret has an opportunity to respond to those at the end of the presentation. Thank you for joining us, Margaret. The stage is now yours.
Yay! Thank you so much, Lori. You are a technical goddess. And thank you, everybody, for joining on a beautiful Saturday. I'm sure it's nicer outside than in front of your monitor, but thank you for being here. And thanks to MWA for having this series on craft. I think it's really great. I'm going to start sharing my screen now because I don't want you looking at me. I want you looking at the slides. Okay, so welcome everybody. Let's see. Oops, now I need to have, there we go. We're talking about writing realistic dialogue today. And so what do we mean by dialogue? I think we all know what we mean by dialogue. I'm assuming that a lot of people on the call are writers. And so I assume that you know that a dialogue is conversation. Sometimes I tend to think you can have dialogue as an inner dialogue. But most people, I think, tend to think of it as between two people. And sometimes there are multiple people, a lot of people talking in a conversation. And I actually love writing those scenes. They're really cool. In my books, I always set myself a goal of like once in each of my books, I have what I call the Marx Brothers scene, where everybody who is a character is all in the room at the same time, all talking at once, just because I think it's fun to write. Okay, so that's what we mean by dialogue. And what do we mean by realistic? Well, for me, these are the three big main areas where I think the realism comes from. First of all, it remains what the spoken words remain true to the character who is speaking them. That is word choice, that is phrasing, that is what they choose to say and what they choose to leave unsaid. The other aspect of it is rhythm. And some of that plays into who the character is. Some of that plays into the subgenre you're writing about. If you're writing a police procedural, you're going to have a different rhythm. You're going to have a different cadence than you do if you're writing a fun, breezy, set between the wars romp through an English murder mystery house. So thinking about the character, thinking about the rhythm, and most importantly, staying grounded in the specifics, not just saying, oh, I'm going to write about a teenager, but, oh, I'm going to write about a teenager from this place at this time with these parents going to this school. The more specific you are, the more realistic your dialogue will come off. And so I would encourage you not to use generic stereotypes, and also don't try to overdo the slang or accents, because that can just be a burden on the reader sometimes. Enough to get your point across, not so much that it becomes a block for the reader. Okay, so let's dive deep on these things. Let's see. I'm going the right direction, yay. Okay, so the most important thing to me is, do you know who's talking? The question you should ask is not how would she say this, it's who is she? And the more you know who she is, the more it will be clear to you what she would say. The more she will just say it. So I'm working on something now that has 8 main characters. It's a locked room mystery, and they're all going to get killed off one by one, but we meet them all at the same time. I have spent about 2 weeks. I have 500 words written so far because it's all background. I'm figuring out all of these 8 people so they all have distinctive voices. And that means answering questions like, where's she from? Is she proud of where she's from or not? Does she try to hide something about her background in the way she speaks? How old is she? What's her family like? Is she a first generation or second generation immigrant? Is she from a very conservative background, or were her parents hippies? Or, what is her family like? How much education does she have? And there again, is she comfortable with that? Is she trying to cover for something? Where does she work? What is her day-to-day like? What music does she listen to? What movies does she watch? This is really important because I think a lot of us have just unconscious little speech patterns. We have references. Like, I'm a huge musical theater nerd, and I will often just salt in a little Sondheim here and there as in my conversation. Your characters may do that with hip hop or with pop or whatever it is they listen to, country and Western, who knows? But you should know. You should know that much about your character. How does her mind work? Does she go running off on tangents, or is she like an engineer or a lawyer that just thinks things through? How does she express her anger? I always like to know what my character's favorite swear word is. What would they yell if someone cut her off in traffic on the freeway? Also, would she call it a freeway or would she call it a highway? So is she introverted, extrovert? You get the idea. You get what I'm talking about here. Ask yourself all these questions, know the answers to all of this. And the more you know the answers to this, you can just let your characters talk. You can just listen to them. So I hope that is helpful. And I know I kind of just blazed right past it. Lori mentioned that feel free to ask questions in the chat. Are there any questions in the chat now after all of that, or should I?
I think everyone is wrapped in attention to you right now.
Okay,
so.
I think everyone is saying she put too much on one slide. Okay, so moving on. Thank you, Lori. So the other thing that I want to talk about is rhythm. I feel like there's a musicality to dialogue, and it's really important to find the right beat. And part of that comes from your character, part of that comes from your genre, part of that comes from you. I listen to different music depending on what I'm writing. When I wrote my first series, it was light, it was frothy. I listened to Afro-Cuban jazz because it just had that bounce that I needed. And I think that shows up in the dialogue. I have something very serious that's with an agent right now that I listened to opera when I was doing that. So I'm not saying score like a musical score, but I'm saying that there is a beat, there is a rhythm to language, and different people have a different rhythm. So listen for that when you're listening to your characters, when you're listening to people out in the world, that as you're doing your exercises on dialogue, because we'll get to that later. I have some exercises on dialogue. The other thing you can do in order to bring that out is when you use your tags and your attributions, when you do a she said, he replied, you can use those to change the beat of a sentence. If you can insert a pause after someone says something that you really want the reader to pay attention to, that's when you put your attribution in. Or if you want it, or if you want something to really sort of like echo in the room after you've written it, then maybe you do a little line of business before the next person speaks, just a little breather, so that the dialogue itself has the rhythm that gets the message across that you want the reader to get. I like doing, I think said almost always works when you're doing attributions. I like adding bits of business. And when I say that, I mean like, he passed the bread, or she asked for the salt, or he raised his glass in a toast, something that gives the reader an attribution for who's speaking without it being, he said, she replied, I asked. And I like doing bits of business because, especially when you've got a bunch of people in a scene, because I think it sort of grounds the scene in a physicality so that the reader doesn't forget, who is in the room and what that room is and what they're doing, whether they're working on a craft or whether they're at the office or whether they're around a table. And my people are often eating around a table because that's the kind of people I write about. And the more people there are in the scene, of course, the more important it is that each has a specific voice so that you're not 100% reliant on those attributes. Now, in some cases, if you're writing a scene about a bunch of teenage girls who are in line to buy tickets for a boy band, they're probably all going to sound a lot alike. So there are cases where your characters will sound alike because in reality, teenage girls who all go to the same school and have a similar background often sound alike. So so that's fine. I'm not saying you have to fake something to make them unique. I'm saying ground it in reality and ground it in specificity. Okay, so enough about rhythm. All right, so how do we figure out how, once we know our character, once we know, okay, this is a person who is 38 years old, has a bachelor's degree from a school that she's not crazy about, is single, mother of 2 kids. Once you know all of your details, then find a place where people like that are, unless that's you and your friends. Find people who is like that and listen to them. If you're writing about cops, find a cop coffee shop or like one of the bars near the Hall of Justice or someplace where cops hang out and listen to them. I know that's hard in COVID. I have not been hanging out anywhere. So the other thing to do is to use podcasts, use YouTube, use all the places where people speak naturally in their own voices. I'm not talking scripted. I'm not talking TV shows, because you don't want them talking like TV cops. You want them talking like real cops in the neighborhood that you're writing about. And if you can't go to that neighborhood and talk to cops, maybe they've got a podcast, maybe they have a YouTube channel, maybe they have some means of media that you can find and listen to. I have in my my movie palace mysteries, they are set at a movie palace, and one of my characters, I have 2 20-something women. One of them lives now and one of them died in the 30s. And so they are both 20-something women, but they speak very differently. And when I was working on the woman who is present day, I listened to a lot of women. She's a film student, so I took a film class from an extension and listened to how the young women in the class talked. When I had to write about the ghost who died in the 30s, I watched a bunch of movies that were made in the 30s and featured young women and got, like, oh, Katharine Hepburn says, golly Moses. I wonder if really people said golly Moses, just to try to ground myself in whatever I could come up with that would put me in that world. So find people, listen to them, but then edit them. Because no one wants to, you don't, how many times have I said and in this? I would be horrified if I actually looked at a transcript. So edit out all of the ums, edit out the stuff that is said in real life that doesn't contribute to the dialogue. And keep your ears open to word choice and phrasing. Is it a generational thing or a location thing that someone says sofa versus couch? Digression. I just took a quiz from, I think it was the New York Times, that said that it could, in 30 questions, it could pinpoint where I was born. And I thought, no, you can't, because I moved around a lot when I was a kid and I've been in California for a long time. It pinned me down. And it pinned me down as coming from within 50 miles of Salt Lake City, because it asked me, what is the bug that curls up? And to me, it's a potato bug. And apparently to no one else in America, it's a potato bug. So know your word choices, because they can be really, really informative about a person's background. Okay, don't get carried away, because you can make your slang, can make your work like super literally dated. You do not want to be saying gag me with a spoon and then have it read 20 years later. And I hope everyone on this call is old enough to know what Gag Me with a Spoon was all about in the 80s. If not, ask your aunts. And do worry about being racist or perpetuating stereotypes, because a lot of the things that, I mean, speaking for myself and my experience, a lot of exposure to other cultures comes through media, not through first person. And that media can be quite can promote stereotypes. It can be racist. So make sure, if you are writing about somebody that is from a culture that's different from yours, who has a lived experience that is different from yours, make sure that you vet it with somebody who has the culture you're writing about, who has the lived experience that you're writing about. Like part of my book that is with an agent right now is set in Thailand. I've never been to Thailand. It was important for plot reasons that it be set in Thailand in the 1990s. So I did that, and I took my best, I did what research I could do. And now I am reaching out to UC San Francisco and the Thai consulate down in LA to see if I can get someone that I will pay to read it and make sure that I got it right. So do pay attention to that, especially if you're going outside of your own lived experiences. Okay, I'm gonna do another question check. Is there anything in the chat yet? Nope.
There have been a few.
Oh, okay.
Do you want them now, or do you want to wait until the end?
Is there anything, is anybody confused?
No one seems confused. Many are comments about dialogue and how different people do dialogues, and questions about how you keep track of extended family for characters. So I can give you those now, or we can just tackle them all at the end.
Let's tackle them all at the end, as long as nobody is like hung up on something now that's gonna get in their way later on.
I'll watch for things that are pertinent and timely, and I'll get you those as you're talking, but if not, I'll just hold them all.
Perfect, thank you so much. Okay, so let's see, okay. And then after you have your characters, after you have you've done your homework, you've listened, then you need to think about how the dialogue functions in the scene. And dialogue can do a lot of different things in the scene. This is MWA. I imagine we all write mysteries. A lot of what dialogue happens in mysteries is advancing the plot. You're questioning a suspect, or you're talking to your sidekick about the case. I've got a little example here. In fact, when I went looking for good examples of dialogue that further the plot along, I found two of them. Both of them started with the same sentence, which is, "So what happened?" And I think that's really important, because something as simple as "so what happened" kicks off the whole scene. It gets the information on the page to the reader with just that simple, natural "so what happened." So here's how Ruth Ware did it. I won't read it out loud. Maybe you're reading it right now. It's not really critically important, but this is a "so what happened" as the amateur sleuth is being asked to take on a case. And no, sorry, that's the next one. This is the amateur sleuth trying to figure out whether someone was killed or not. This same question, it's from a different book. This is from Anthony Horowitz, and it's "so what happened" as she's trying to figure out if she wants to take the case. So don't underestimate a simple question for kicking off a conversation. Okay, we don't need to spend time reading the whole thing, although I really do recommend that book. All right, the next thing you can do, the next function that dialogue can serve, is to show a character. And in dialogue, as in everything else in writing, showing is better than telling. You do not want someone to come into a room and announce, "I am a world-weary gumshoe with a drinking problem." No. Sam Spade never said that, but we got it from the other things he said. So here are a couple of examples of a character showing us who they are by something that they say. And in the first one, there's your hard-boiled dialogue. "I don't want to die, baby, but if I have to, I'm going to die last." As opposed to Miss Marple saying, "Oh, we won't talk about murder during tea. It's so unpleasant." and then another Anthony Horowitz. If you want a round of applause, you'll have to take off the handcuffs. That tells us right away that the person speaking is very cool. And I would say, since he's British, insouciant, under pressure. Did I say that right? I don't know if I've ever said that word out loud before. Anyway, you get the idea. Show the character through what they say. The other thing you can do is show a relationship. The ways that two people talk, and what they say, what they don't say, what they talk around can be very revealing. Here are two examples of couples. One, the top one is a Victorian couple. The second one is a modern day couple in Gone Girl. And you can see in this one, what I like about contrasting these is the language is very different, of course, because Victorian to present. The rhythm is very different. In the first one, you'll see bigger words, more syllables, and longer sentences. In the second one, it is a driving, fast-paced thriller, and the language reflects that. It's shorter words, shorter sentences, almost staccato in the punctuation. And that I think shows us a good contrast of how the dialogue can actually contribute to reinforcing the genre or the subgenre that you're writing in, the style. And the last thing you can do is take a breather. Sometimes things are really happening fast, especially in mysteries, and you just need to let the reader sort of take a step back. This is a very famous example from the movie Pulp Fiction, which I didn't put the attribute because I ran out of room, but this is a break in the action of all of the mayhem and bloodshed that's taking place, and this is one of the most famous scenes. And it's not plot, it's just character and character relationships. And I love doing those scenes. You really kind of have to be careful with how often you do them. It's really useful in small doses, but it can bog you down if you do it too much. But I know for what I write, the people who read my books are in it mainly for the characters, because I'm not a plot person. I'm a character person, and I always feel like if my readers want to hang out in the break room with the staff of the Palace Theater, I've got them. You know, they're going to come back for the next book, and part of that is how they talk to each other. Okay, so this is going much faster than it did when I do the run through. Yay. Okay, so I have a couple of things that you could try to practice some of this stuff. I mean, you're going to be figuring out who your character is in all of their details. You're going to be listening to people who are similar to those characters and figuring out how they speak. And then just some practical stuff. I did this a while ago. I took a screenwriting class from UCLA because hello, COVID, everything is online. So I was able to do that. And this was one of the exercises, is do a Zoom call. And then there's something called live transcription, where you can actually get it typed out as if you're closed captioning. And there's Google how to set it up. It's not simple how to set it up. You have to go to your accounts on web pages anyway. But you can do it. You can get this live transcript of what is being said, and it's fascinating. Like I talked to my best friend for about 45 minutes, and then when I read it, I noticed things in her speech that I had never noticed in 30 years of talking to her. So it really can open your eyes about how people actually talk, and especially people that you think you know that you aren't maybe hearing. Okay, another idea is to write a two-person dialogue scene. Like write a scene in your book when you've done all your homework, you know who's talking, write a scene, then try swapping the characters. And it should be hard. It should not feel right to put this character's words in this character's mouth. If it does feel right, maybe they're too similar, or maybe you're not being specific enough. Okay, and then another thing, this is another screenplay trick, screenplay around with it. Take a scene that you've written without dialogue, like a scene where you're the narrator speaking, or you're the omniscient voice, or you're setting the stage or something like that, and try to rewrite it as dialogue. With however many people you need to get it across. It's just a really interesting little exercise. So there are tons more exercises. If you go online and do, like writing exercises for dialogue, you'll find a ton of them. Some people like write the script to a silent movie, things like that. There's a lot out there. I really learned a lot from the Zoom call, and I learned a lot from the one about trying to rewrite a scene as pure dialogue. So I think that takes us to thank you. And okay, so now let's talk questions. Sorry, I feel like I've just stream of consciousness babbled for the past 20 minutes. I'm sorry.
Sort of like dialogue, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so we have several questions and comments. I'll do the questions first, and then if we have time, the comments can induce more conversation from you or input from you, but I'll go with the strict questions first.
Perfect.
So Susan Bickford asks, how do you feel about adverbs, those dreaded ly verbs, like she put in, she said gaily?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I mean, sometimes they're fine. I'm not going to say, as someone very famously said, that the road to hell is paved with adverbs. But I try not to use them as possible. I feel like if you're using them too much as a crutch, you might want to take a look at what is actually being said, and say it gaily instead of saying she said gaily. Make it really clear that she's in a great mood as she's saying this.
Right, that's a good point. I think sometimes, do you think adverbs could have a place in a book, but maybe just not in those tags?
Yeah. Yeah, that's entirely possible.
Okay, Catherine Kramer asked, do you draw genograms for your characters to keep a visual for yourself, the extended family? This may show how the character speaks due to their family origin.
That is a great idea. I am not that organized, but that is a great idea. I tend to use index cards, and I have cards for all of my people, and they're to some extent color coded so that I know all of this characters or this. So I do index cards, and I have, like pages in Word. I have a whole file, electronic file. But I'm not familiar with the term genogram, but it sounds fascinating and like something I should use. I love it.
Doesn't that? We're such word nerds.
Writing that down.
Barry Content asks, any suggestions for who to read for dialogue that's great with beats of conflict rather than exposition?
Okay. Well, I just reread Get Shorty. And I got to say, Elmore Leonard is really good with the dialogue, with especially with the rhythm of the dialogue. Let's see. What's coming more to mind for me is movies rather than books. I like, and it depends on. I'm sorry. Was there a specific kind of dialogue in the question that they were looking for?
He said a dialogue that's great with beats of conflict rather than exposition. So
okay. I'm so sorry. That's generally not the kind of book that I read, so I can't say beyond Elmore Leonard, who is about as far out in action as I go. I'm more of a cozy author. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm useless.
That's okay. And also I just got a add-on to that said, thanks, Margaret, Misty here. So I'm thinking that's Misty Berry. Hi. Okay. So let's see. Jessica Salvador Blaylock asks, how often should we use he said, she said, etc.? And is the order like said Harry or Harry said? Do you exchange those?
I exchange those because I like to change it up as much as possible. And I think, you use it as often as you need to. That sounds like a cop-out, but you're the writer. And hopefully you'll work with beta readers or a reading group, a writing group that can help you, like if you've got 3 or 4 lines with no attribution, but it's only 2 people talking, you can probably pretty much, if you start off with a he said, You can probably figure out what the next couple of lines are, especially if it's only two. You certainly wouldn't need it on every line at that point. And so I would rely on other people to read it and tell you if they get lost, if they need an attribution, if they lose track of who's speaking, because in your mind you're hearing their voices. But I would sanity check it with somebody else. I would err on the side of fewer and then see if people get lost.
Good. So just if for those of you who are out there on Facebook, Michelle Chouinard actually said Tim Maloney is excellent at that, dialogue with conflict, that is. So watch the chat too, because not only are you getting excellent information from Margaret, you're also getting some input from other people who are joining us.
Yay! Thank you, everybody. Yay.
Yeah. Okay. Jessica Salvador Blaylock also recommended reading Blanche Dubois and Stanley Kowalski's Scenes from a Streetcar Named Desire. Yeah, I always choke up on Kowalski. Those are great scenes. I mean, you might have to put on a torn white shirt, armless T-shirt before you do that, but yeah, that's not a problem. Okay. Catherine Kramer makes a comment, bracelets instead of handcuffs from an episode of The Wire. I loved that insider term, which goes back a bit, Margaret, to what you said about terms by geography or background. So do you have any more comments on how to find those? Well,
every profession has a lingo. Both of my brothers were in the Navy and everything was acronyms. And I suspect police might be that a little bit as well. But I think it's probably regional and a little bit, I'm going to say cultural, but I mean the culture of cops or lawyers or doctors or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can think of to expose yourself to that kind of lingo is making the acquaintance with that kind of person as much as you possibly can, through whatever means can. If you can't do it in person, then maybe, you know, they write a blog, you know, maybe you can find somebody who's written a blog or a memoir or something like that. But yeah, I love bracelets instead of handcuffs. That's great.
That is great. Jessica had another comment, actually a question. How do you add dramatic irony to dialogue?
Ooh, see, well, I'm kind of steeped in irony. So it's just, I mean, if your character naturally has that mindset, then I hope it would come across. Like I have in this book that's with an agent now, I have someone who is truly horrifying. I mean, she is a scary, scary person and she will say something horrible. And then I have the character that she's saying to is her lawyer. And so I will do something in the dialogue to give it a beat. And then he'll say something like, awesome. And what I hope is that the reader gets that he is saying awesome because he is completely freaked out and doesn't know how to say, this woman scares me to death. So I think you need to play with it. I mean, are there movies? Are there books? I think Carl Hyacin is really good at doing that sort of thing. He writes crazy books set in Florida. But I mean, I feel like if you know enough to ask the question, you are already so far ahead of the game, that I would say follow your instinct with it.
Yeah, I think remaining true to the voice of the character is important, and you're right. Should that sort of thing should come through, but it's a great question because it makes us aware that that's something we should be watching for as we write this dialogue.
Yeah.
A couple of more comments from Catherine Kramer. One early on, she said, I love your character background development list. It mirrors characters' preparation for actors. I might suggest embodying your character and speaking their dialogue aloud. I assume you'll suggest this. And you did. You talked about talking the dialogue out loud, and your the Zoom call with a friend too. It might actually be interesting not just to see that live transcription of the conversation, but to actually dole out the parts like a screenplay with them and ask your friend to read one of the other parts of the book for you.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, and a lot of times when, especially when I was starting out, I didn't catch anything until after the book was published and I was trying to do readings in bookstores. And then it was like, oh, this isn't natural. So now I do. I'm one of those people who reads it aloud before I send it in to the publisher.
Yeah. Yeah, that is, I do tend to read things out loud as well. And I
It's
stumble
beautiful.
over,
It's
it is, and I
beautiful.
stumble over things and I say, oh, that sounded so good in my head.
Yep, yep.
Okay. Catherine also asked, after you've written a book, how do you silence the characters who might be persistent? Consider writing another book unless they are killed off. So,
Right.
so do you could just consider if you, so I think what she's asking is she's written one book, should that turn into a series? Basically, characters will not leave her alone now, or unless they're dead, then you really can't come back. Although
Yeah,
there's ways to
yeah.
do that too.
Well, yeah, you could. Um, I think if the characters are still talking to you, then maybe you've got a series on your hands. I mean, I'll be honest. I had my Movie Palace series. I thought was going to be 5 books, and it is 3, and I still have stories to tell. So I'm a little bit torn about whether I'm going to continue it without my publisher or not, just because I still want to hang out with those people, and they still have stuff to say. So if your characters are still listening to you, are still speaking to you, I would say still listen to them until other characters come along that that captivate you just as much.
Yeah, I agree. And if you like them, chances are the readers like them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine made another comment that names in the Navy are strange to non-Navy folks, lots of nicknames specific to the military.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. My husband spent 28 years as a naval aviator. And so we have an entire pack of friends. I have no idea what their real name is.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I thought my brother always referred to someone named Ops, and I didn't know that that was because he was the operation. I thought his name was Ops, but
Right.
that was his job.
His job. Right.
Yeah.
And when I made a comment actually as you were going, one of the things that you said early on is you said um, about knowing your characters. You said, is she proud of where she's from? And that really struck me because it's not just the tangible effect or the what we hear of regional dialogue. It's how people try to mask
Yeah.
those things
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if anybody watched the show Justified, but I saw an interview with one of the characters, one of the actors who played a character who had a very florid way of speaking, very big words all the time, complex sentences. And in this interview, he said that his character was embarrassed that he had dropped out of high school. And that's why he spoke that way. And it just really clicked. It's like, oh, that makes sense. In this mining town where nobody has an education, he's putting himself above everybody with his language.
Yeah, that stuff like that is great as well. One thing that I do, so that's the end of the questions and comments. I'll keep watching in case anyone else posts anything for the next minute or so.
And
But
sorry.
Oh, good.
I was just going to say, if you have any more questions or comments or think of something later, feel free to drop me a line, and we'll continue.
Yeah, and people can also continue to comment on the video. These remain on our Facebook page, and I believe that you can comment under the videos. So if you have questions, I don't know if they'll get to Margaret. I think it's wiser to send her an email. But if you have more comments about things, feel free to go ahead and post them on the Facebook page as well. And I'm going to pop back on here with you. I don't know if I'll actually show up on Facebook. That wouldn't be the worst thing if I did not. But I did want to say that MWA NorCal is a chapter of Mystery Writers of America. And MWA in general does some really fabulous things to promote to support aspiring as well as professional mystery writers. So if anyone's out there and you haven't joined yet, I think MWA is a great thing to consider joining. You'll be placed in a chapter by region. So if you live near us, you'll be part of our clan. But we do try to keep things open and available for people, for everyone, member or not. So these Facebook Live events will remain open to the general public. And thank you for joining us today. Margaret, any parting words?
keep writing, keep listening. And thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Lori, for taking care of everything, and MWA for having me.
It was wonderful. Excellent presentation. Thank you so much, Margaret, for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, everyone. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.